Three, two, one. Welcome everybody to Life Point Table Talk. Today we're going to be doing the Bible reading reflection. My name is Jason, and I'm here with brother Pastor Tyler.
Hello, hello, hello.
And this week we are on week 5 of our reading. We've got Exodus 19 through 36 and Matthew 20 through 23. So 3 chapters new and like a ton in the old.
Yes.
Which seems to be how it's working out here. So we have a ton of ground to cover for the Old Testament. Let's start there and see how far we can get.
Sounds good.
All right. So Exodus 19, we're starting off here. We're at camp at Sinai, right?
Yeah.
God calls Moses up. He shows up in a cloud to talk to Moses in front of the people. No one can touch the mountain, or they're going to be killed.
Holy, holy, holy.
I really like the part where it talks about how the Lord descends from the mountain with thunder, lightning, fire, covered in thick cloud, loud trumpets, and the whole mountain shook violently.
Yeah, I know.
I like the sci-fi view of scriptures, and that's one of the best ones right there.
Absolutely. I got to thinking about it too, because I mean we know God is revealed on the cross through Jesus, and rightfully so. That's like we're told we want to see what God really looks like. We look at Jesus, and He's revealed completely on the cross with that just self-sacrificial death and gift of grace. But I think sometimes we also forget that He's also the God of Mount Sinai.
Yeah, right.
Like the just such power you can't even really comprehend.
Yeah, and at one point I think it even says, so the people would have the fear of God in them.
Yeah,
like literally trying to scare them.
Yeah, this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
You need to realize that I am holy.
Yeah, and so everyone's scared. Moses talks to God. God answers him. Then he calls Moses up. He brings Aaron with him. Let's see here. And then next we get into 20, we get into the 10 Commandments. Right?
Yeah, and one thing real quick on 19 that I think is really huge too is we see the original call of Israel that gets directly translated for us as Christians in the New Testament, where he says, "You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Like that was the original idea, from the start. Like that was the perfect ideal will.
Yeah.
And you see that exact same thing in 1 Peter, where he talks about us, that we are the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That we are now God's chosen people. We are this kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That really jumped out at me. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That I love that continuity.
Yeah.
From old to new.
Yeah, and there's some things there he seems to have to keep repeating over and over again, especially about the other gods, you know. And when you get into 20, that's the first one, the first commandment there. So I'll read through these real quick. I'll just do the 10 here. So it's number 1, no other gods before me. Number 2, make no image and worship it. Number 3, don't misuse the Lord's name. Number 4, remember the Sabbath. Number 5, honor your father and mother. Number 6, don't murder. Number 7, no adultery. Number 8, don't steal. Number 9, don't lie about people, falsely accuse them. And number 10, don't covet or desire what others have. So that's the big 10 right there.
Those are the big ones.
Move that back a little bit. There we go. So those are the big ones. I feel like just that alone was so revolutionary to human beings at that point in time and society. It's a little easy to kind of take some of this for granted as like, duh, you shouldn't steal or don't murder, but
Yeah.
it was kind of a free for all, at the time. And I think God was, Greg Boyd talks about. He was meeting them where they were at, and
Yeah, that antiquity, that culture, that it was thousands of years ago.
yeah, and I think that's also why Jesus later, the revelation is even more intense. You know what I mean? Like this is kind of the starting place. And again, right off the bat, no other gods before me, no images to worship. Again, the people are scared. They tell Moses to go up to talk to God. And again, there's a specific directive: no golden idols.
Yeah, he hits it again.
Yeah, over and over.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
he must have seen something coming.
Yeah.
And then as we get into 21, it starts getting more and more specific. I feel like to
It does.
building a civilization.
I think that's exactly what it is. The covenant code begins, and this is how they're going to live in community with each other, expanding out of those Big Ten.
Yeah, those are kind of generalities, and then it gets pretty specific on some of these things.
To donkeys and oxes
and some of them, I gotta say, they're pretty strange.
There's some, yes.
So it starts off talking about servitude, which is interesting because you're supposed to free them after 6 years. There's kind of rules like this. Talks again about murder, kidnapping, attack your parents, you get killed. You kidnap, you get killed. You murder, you get killed. There's a lot of eye for an eye, wound for wound,
Burn for burn.
burn for burn.
Yep.
Yeah. If you hit someone with a stone, it's okay if they can walk away.
Seems fair.
Yeah, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's very specific. You can beat your slave if they recover in a couple of days. Which stuff like that is, again, personally, I think he's just meeting them where they're at with some of this stuff. That was just entrenched in the way they saw the world and the way the world worked at that time.
Yeah.
And as we go over into 22, we're still in this area, I feel like, of kind of setting up the way the society he wants them to live. Gets into property matters, about stealing, talks about sorcerers or sorceresses, also death.
That's intolerable, yes.
Yep, sex with animals, death. And this was a big one, don't mistreat foreigners. I thought that was really cool because he brings it back around to
Yeah,
them.
it likens it that they were foreigners.
You were
themselves.
foreigners. Yeah. And Moses kind of talks about that several different times. When his father-in-law shows up again,
Yeah.
he keeps saying, I'm a foreigner in a foreign land.
Yeah, stranger in a strange land,
Yeah.
all that talk.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's always a pointer to remember what they were rescued from.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that really is an identifier. Like, this is what God did for us. Don't forget. There's a lot of don't forgets.
Yeah. And they're also not there yet.
Yeah.
They're still they're in a foreign land. It's not their land yet. They're not where they are trying to go.
Yeah. Well, when I was starting to look at this from Exodus 19, I was realizing that this was a lot of stuff that is going to continue not only through Exodus, but all the way through Numbers.
Yeah.
Basically on. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to be a while. We're going to be here for a while.
Yeah. It's the ground floor. And I think some of these things, like, you would have had to been there to understand some of it, ground
Yeah.
floor, no. Because sometimes I think we're so used to the way our society works
Yeah.
right now, um, and it's it's more fragile than we probably realize. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, you mentioned some of the biggies like death
Mhm.
equals death equals death. But I think that they were just starting out, so there were some deal breakers.
Yeah,
Like if you don't nip this stuff in the bud right
Yeah.
now, you're going to, from then on, it's going to be a problem. And I see that in, I think it's Acts 6 or 5, Acts 5 with Ananias and Sapphira. Crazy story there where it just seems so
intense.
intense, like kind of extra. Like
Yeah.
really? That's death? But that was the church just starting, just like they're just starting.
Yeah.
It's like God's got to shut certain stuff down
Yeah,
before it can even get started.
yeah. There was less room for error because it is foundational.
Yeah, it's
Probably.
foundational, and that goes instantly. Then the whole
and
thing
and the overarching plan, which is leading to Jesus, there was probably extra scrutiny on everything,
Yeah.
and the fact that they saw manifestation of God like no one else had seen in a long time, at least.
right.
That probably came with a certain level of responsibility as well, whether they liked it or not. Let's see. So then we get into 22 is mostly more of these
Yeah, the
kind of laws and different things like that. 23, it's the same, but it's interesting. It's still kind of building civilization. Don't follow crowds into lies, giving false reports, starting violence. I feel like some of these are there because that stuff is like human nature. Like a lot of these things are like there because they've been happening for a long time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he can tell this, you're probably going to want to do this. You're probably going to want to tell lies, start a big, violent, crazy thing. Like that's what people do. Again, don't oppress foreigners. They talk about that again. Start to get into Sabbath laws a little bit. Which is really fascinating. It's so intense at this time, and I feel like, at least in Protestant churches, we've gone so intense the other way. It's like,
With Sabbath.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sabbath.
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. It went from you might die if you don't do this to like, what is that?
Yeah, and I think some of that stems from a misunderstanding of some of the things Jesus said about the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like he was anti-Sabbath or something, which was the opposite.
Yeah.
He was pro-Sabbath, just done the right way.
Yep.
And actually, I have a quote here from Douglas Stewart's commentary on Exodus. He said concerning Sabbath that to love God is to not have some lazy day, one day a week. Rather, it is to focus on doing His will, specially on one day a week, to worship, learn, study, care, strengthen the Spirit.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus was all about, like doing those things that were,
Yeah.
Heaven on earth. That's what Sabbath was all about.
Right.
And so it was really important. And yeah, I think we've lost that a little bit.
I mean, just that, I've got 4 kids and we're hyper busy, and it's like, man, we need a Sabbath. It just doesn't stop.
That might have been a good idea.
And I can't imagine the whole. I mean, you see this in Israel still, the whole place shutting down. You really can't do anything.
I would love to see that in person.
Yeah, I mean, if that were happening across our whole country, you know what I mean? What that would be like for even mental health of people, or like just take a day off,
Stop.
Yeah. I think it's cool too. Get into festivals.
Mm-hmm.
He starts, creating events on the calendar. The festival, there's 3 big ones. Festival of Unleavened Bread, that's celebrating coming out of Egypt. Festival of Harvest, with first fruits from the harvest, festival of ingathering, end of the year when all crops are gathered.
Yeah.
Um,
Once again, it's like, don't forget. These are things to help you. Don't forget.
yeah, but it's a celebration too,
Yeah.
which is cool.
It's
At
like a
the-
party people.
Yeah, you got 3 parties. I'm gonna give you 3 of those pizza parties.
And I love this too. This is one of the several times that he goes out of his way to tell them not to boil a young goat in the milk of its mother.
Yeah, yeah. No cheeseburgers.
No cheeseburgers. But I looked into it, and that has a real connotation of occultic stuff and that ancient Near Eastern cultures.
Yeah.
Like that had a lot to do with magic and
Okay.
the calling on of other gods for whatever reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole mother's milk and the goat was like a very common thing. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff probably there.
yeah,
that
like
to-
don't do what they do.
Well, yeah, I mean, just with the surface reading seems totally crazy.
Yeah.
But if you can dig a little bit,
Yeah.
it wasn't just arbitrary rules and laws. You know, it was, like I said, it was coming from somewhere, some
Sure.
experience or something going on. All right, we got to get moving here. We got to
Yeah.
turn the ground. Man, there's so much though.
24.
God sends his angel ahead of them. They're supposed to listen to him. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's that about? He's going to wipe out 6 groups of people, demolish them, break their sacred stones. These people groups seem to always be connected to some sacred worship of an idol. All of them.
Yep. They can't have that in the Israelite camp. Can't be infiltrated by that idolatry.
Right.
And I love that it says that he will send hornets ahead of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drive them out with bees.
Bees. Okay, let's get moving. 24, God calls Moses up and Aaron and his sons and 70 elders. This is also one of my favorite
Oh, it's so good.
passages. It's like Close Encounters, Third Kind of thing.
Yes.
Moses is writing down everything God is saying. They build 12 altars. They're starting the 12 tribes. He reads them the Book of the Covenant and sprinkles blood on them. Amazing. Wild stuff going on there.
It is.
Then God call. I wish I could see exactly what was going on there. There must have been different places in the mountain. Then God calls them up even further. And everyone else, just Moses, I think, goes. Or maybe.
No, it's the 70.
But
It went up with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders. And that's when they talk about when they saw the...
under his feet.
Yeah.
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 Pavement like sapphires, clear and blue as sky. I don't know. My mind goes in all kinds of places for that
too.
stuff. What they were seeing there, it's just wild.
Yeah, are they seeing into heaven? Are they seeing some special revelation?
And then they have some kind of lunch, dinner.
Yeah, I
while
love
this is
it.
happening.
Meal.
Then we make the tablets. God makes the tablets. He manifests in a cloud, consuming fire on the mountain. And Moses goes into it and stays for 40 days. That's the part I think I'm thinking about. He goes further. Not all
Yeah.
70 of them go.
No one
in that part.
ever gets to the top other than Moses.
Yeah.
Ever. And later on, Joshua will go with him like halfway.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
That's what I mean. There must have been
Yeah, there's like
tears of intensity
Yeah.
as the further you went up. Let's see, 25.
And that's a big deal too. This 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
Because when we get to what happens in a few chapters, it helps it make a tiny bit more sense with the golden calf.
Yeah. 25, we get into free will offerings, which
Yeah.
is cool because the people actually get it right. They all come together, and they're giving to make the sanctuary and the ark and the
and
tables
and
all.
I think I've never seen this before. This is like huge for just giving in general.
Yeah.
Like this is an act of worship.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is an act of worship and giving because they're in the middle of the wilderness.
Right.
So where are they getting all this gold and silver and bronze? What's from their Egyptian plunder?
Yeah, they took it.
It's theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having to give of their own things towards this sacrifice, this gift. It's really cool.
Yeah, and they give so much, he has to tell them to stop. at some point. That's how much they were giving. So 25, 26, we start getting into making the tabernacle. These are all instructions, because it goes through all of this again later when they actually do it. So God is giving them instructions on, and then in 27, how to make the altar, how to make the courtyard, how to make the oil for the lamps. It's all pretty specific stuff there. Mm-hmm. It's cool.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant was back there too.
Yep. And then they get into in 28 the priestly garments, which is cool too. The ephod, which is like this fancy apron vest.
Yeah.
And a breastpiece with stones on it.
12 stones for the tribes.
And he had to have bells on it.
Yeah,
in case he dies.
People will know that you're in there. You're still tinkling.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Awesome.
29, then they could start to get into the specifics of what they have to go through for the priests, the consecration of the priests. Mm-hmm. There's this whole cleaning process, and they get dressed a certain way, anointed, specifics about how to make sacrifices. They sacrifice bulls and rams, and then like breads and cakes. Let's see. Then we get into 30. They're talking about altar for incense. Mm-hmm. They have incense going the whole time.
Which was also very specific and important. And
they weren't allowed to use it elsewhere.
Yeah, and there's a story later on, I think it might be in Judges, where there's like an explosion.
Right.
With the wrong incense.
Explosive.
They die.
Incense.
Yeah, it's all very important. It's very holy.
Yeah. In 30, it's another foreshadowing of Christ, probably. They give the ransom money for each person when they're counted, so no plague comes on them. So they count everybody, and when they're counted, they give a shekel, or half shekel, I think it was.
Yeah, and everybody, no matter
does.
what, rich or poor, everybody gives the same.
And they get into more specifics on the making oil there, washing basins. It was a whole elaborate process, which I think is actually really cool.
Yeah.
I missed some of that. It was, I think we talk about holy, but it was like special. You know what I mean? This was a separate, this wasn't just normal, everyday.
Yeah, and you see that with the garments for the priests. Like it was an honor. It was dignified. It was special.
Yeah, it was important.
And it had to have been kind of like something to behold, to watch it happen. Like if you were Israel, like it was like an event.
There's a richness to it, you know. 31, we get into craftsmen.
Which I love, because I love the whole artist thing.
Yeah. And
verse 3, it's just really, really jumps out. It says, it's talking about a guy named Bezalel. Mm-hmm. And it says, God saying, I have filled him with the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
To do that, to do what he's called to do as an
amazing.
Artist.
Yeah.
Like he's filled with the Spirit to do art and construction and crafts. And
awesome. There are especially a couple, it's him and another guy, I forget his name.
Yeah.
Asamak? I can't even say it.
Yeah. Oholiab?
But he makes the tents and the ark and the seat and the furnishings. But those guys were given a special anointing, and then they taught the other people how to do things as well.
Yeah, this comes up later.
Cool. So that was all instructions said to Moses on Sinai.
For 40 days and 40 nights.
At first I thought it was happening, but then I realized it wasn't. Those were just the instructions.
No, I love it. And Hebrews says that this tabernacle is a shadow of what's to come with Christ. And I think that, like, what Moses was seeing into heaven, like what's going on now.
Yeah.
The same thing we get in Revelation, like a little glimpse into what it looks like there. And these are maybe the best categories he has for for
To explain it.
replicating and making a pattern of these things that he's seen,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the tabernacle, because this is where God dwells. It's where he lives, and where he's going to live with them is in this tabernacle.
Yeah. So 32, we get into Moses is hasn't come back yet. And the people do what? They decide to make a golden calf. Exactly what God, we were saying, keeps telling them not to do. They immediately do it. Aaron does it, which is even crazier. And I can't help think, how intense this is, that they were seeing a manifestation of God that people have argued over God and who God is, and they're seeing it right there, and then it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
2 seconds later, they're still doing what they want to do,
Yeah.
And I think that's like why Jesus talks about a sign, sometimes not being what you think it is.
Yeah.
Like, you're still going to do it.
Yeah.
What's in there,
It's almost a deterrent sometimes, because now you're expecting that, and when you don't get it.
Yeah. And so they are worshiping the idol. They're eating and drinking. Revelry, whatever. Who knows what was going on there.
Yeah. And I love, too, the 2 different accounts for Aaron on how this calf came about.
Yeah.
The first one, which is true, was that he asked for them to bring their gold, and that he crafted this thing out of the fire.
Yeah.
And then later on, when Moses shows up, he's like, I just threw some stuff in the fire, that thing came out. I don't know.
The best. The best.
I don't know what happened, man.
Yeah. It just came out of there. So Moses comes down and sees them going crazy. He gets mad and breaks the tablets. I think that's crazy.
It is. Well, and it's hugely symbolic. The covenant's already been broken.
Yeah. And then, this is wild too, he breaks the idol, he burns it, he grinds it into powder, puts it in water, and makes them drink it.
Drink it.
That is crazy. So then this keeps going. The people are just off the chain. They're going crazy. So Moses stands at the gate, says, whoever's with me, come over here.
Yeah.
And if you're not, the Levites come. They call them out specifically. And then they go through the camp and they kill the people who didn't.
Yeah. And also, before that, though, Moses also stands and intercedes for them. Like, God's like, all right, that's it. I'm going to destroy these people. And it's it's almost like it's a wink, like he's asking Moses to recall his covenant promises.
Well, that's the part too.
Because Moses does. He says, "Wait a second here. You promised this to your to Abraham."
That's one of the best, where God calls it his people, talking to Abraham.
Oh yeah, it's like with your like with your wife. It's your kid just did.
Yeah, exactly.
What your kid just did.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Oh, it's huge. It says, remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants to whom you swore by yourself, and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven.
Yeah.
So he's reminding him, hey, wait a minute. If you wipe these people out, how are you going to accomplish these covenant promises and your faithfulness?
Yeah.
And so he does.
Yeah. And
it's awesome.
God relents.
Yeah.
That's wild. He changes his plan.
Yeah. But then, like you just said, you turn the corner a few paragraphs later, and there's still the kibosh has fallen.
Yeah.
Like it's 3,000 people are dead.
Yep.
Judgment.
So Moses goes to God to atone. And it's what Moses does here is amazing, because we're talking about how intense the situation is with the fire and lightning, all that. And he says to God, if he's not going to forgive him, to just blot him out as well.
Yeah.
I mean, extraordinary.
Yeah, he's like, he will take it for the people.
Yeah.
He'll be their sacrifice. Blot me out from your book.
Yeah.
Incredible.
We're almost there. We got to get through here.
Sure, yeah, we're almost.
So the people are mourning. So that it gets to the point, it talks about how Moses has this tent. Is this a tent of meeting?
Yeah, the tent of meeting. So this is the a temporary replacement for the tabernacle. Like they lost their tabernacle benefits.
In between time.
In between time, now they have to meet outside the camp in the tent. So it's a whole different deal. And now this is also, I believe, where Moses goes to meet with God, and he comes back and he's just like glowing.
Yeah, well,
it's the glory, right?
I don't know if we're there. Yeah, it's coming up. It's comes
part
up,
of the tent of meeting.
Yeah, well, he takes him up on the mountain to see him. It's when he goes into the tent, and it's just crazy too. That a pillar of cloud would come down and meet him in the tent while they talked, and then it would go up, go away when he came out.
Incredible.
And again, the way Moses talks with God is amazing. It says the Lord spoke to Moses face to face, like as a friend. So obviously God was showing up in different manifestations. I don't think he was in there talking to fire and lightning, and he showed up in some other form that they could sit down and talk like friends.
Right.
And then Moses asked to see him again. What is this, like, shape-shifting thing going on?
Yeah.
And God says, okay, he's got a place he's gonna put him. He puts him in a rock, on the hill. He says, you just can't see my face because you'll die. I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, it's just too much.
And then, so he gets to see his back while he walks by. That's crazy. I don't even know what's going on there.
Yeah.
I think that is when his face starts to glow. No, then
that's when the covenant's kind of renewed there.
Yeah,
and that's
because God says he's not going to go with them, and Moses keeps again arguing with God, convincing him to go. And eventually God says, okay, I'll do it for you, because basically I like you, I'll do it. And so then he's up there another 40 days, and Moses writes down the covenant, and that's when he comes down and his face is radiant. He's gone nuclear.
Yeah.
And everybody's scared of him. He didn't even realize what was happening.
Yeah.
He just walks in and he's like,
what?
He's like neon. So then after that, he has to wear a veil.
Hide the glory.
It's crazy.
Because it freaks the people out.
Yeah. And
who knows? It could be also that it's a reminder of what they've done. It's very recently that they've kind of missed the boat with the whole golden calf thing. Yeah. And so there's that natural fear of God.
So it ends 35 and 36. They finally start making this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
They're finally back on track, kind of.
And it goes through a bunch of particulars about what they had already been told to do.
Yeah, which is going to end up in the next week's reading.
Yeah.
And reflection. Which is amazing to me, too, because I saw it in a different light, this tabernacle, because it was so mobile. Like, it just seems like kind of a really cool thing, if you can wrap your mind around it.
Yeah.
Just this moving, dwelling place of God.
Right.
Like, with all those walls and curtains, they had to fold up. Like, it's mobile.
Right.
This mobile tent of meeting tabernacle, like, seeing that coming from afar, it just gives you a whole different kind of view of like a military procession, but instead of an army, it's just like this most high living God coming your way in this mobile tabernacle. Pretty awesome.
So all right, well, in there we went a little long. That's all right. There was so much awesome stuff in there, so much I wish I could have been there to see some of these things, but thanks for sticking with us, checking it out. Keep tuning in. We'll do a part 2 here for the New Testament reading. And have a great day, everybody. Tune in again to the Life Point Tabletop Podcast. Peace.
Awesome. Bye.
In 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to the Life Point Table Talk podcast. We are on week 5 here of our Bible reflection reading. My name is Jason, and I've got with me brother Pastor Tyler.
Hello, hello.
And we just did part 1, and it was a longie, but a goodie. And so we're going to do part 2 here for our New Testament reading, which is Matthew 20 through 23. And let's just jump right in here, shall we?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start at 20. He starts off with the parable of the workers. And interesting, he starts it off, I think all of these, or he says it quite a few times. The kingdom of heaven is like this. Yeah. And then
I love that.
He keeps using this kingdom of heaven language for sure. Let's see. So the general story on this one is a landowner hires people to work for a certain price. Then he hires others later who work less time, but he pays them the same. And at the end he says, first of all, he can do what he wants because it's his. Mm-hmm. And it's not unfair because he paid...
he paid what he said he would.
The original people what he said he would.
Yeah.
And he can pay whatever he wants to for the last people. And at the end he says, the first will be last and the last shall be first. I think that's really interesting, just reading through this again, because I always heard that first and last thing is kind of a class thing, like almost, like a upside, like the people on the bottom class are going to take over the top or whatever, or something like that. And I'm sure there's something kind of there to that, but it's really just a leveling of the playing field there.
Yeah.
And amazing illustration there.
It is. It's multifaceted too. There's humility there is implied, and there's also implied though too with this parable that there are people in that generation right there, people that no one ever expected, sinners, prostitutes, tax collectors. They're gonna we're gonna see it in just a couple chapters here.
Yeah,
that they're coming in before the others.
Yeah,
because they're repentant, they're willing, they're open.
Yeah,
to the Messiah's message.
And he does more parables later that it gets more and more specific.
Yeah, and I think it's also a great representation of grace. This is what grace looks like.
Yeah, and
you worked 1 hour, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's really this heart thing. And I was talking with Pastor Katrina about this in some of these other Old Testament readings, where it's like somebody gets blessed. And then somebody gets mad about it, like over and over and over again.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. So there's this kind of like root human nature thing where, hey, why is he getting that?
I worked the heat of the day.
Which is like a root thing that's off in us. Instead of just being happy, oh, cool, we all get to get paid here. We get mad about it.
Yeah. And we're going to see this more in the parables to come too. He's also talking to a chosen people that have been there for millennia, that have had every opportunity to be a part of this kingdom. And
well, again, I get it. I would be mad too, kind of like these guys just show up at the end with what the Israelites, Hebrew people have gone through. Yeah. These guys just show up, like they own the place or whatever, and after all that work.
I think about that a lot too with our beautiful Jewish brothers and sisters when it comes to Christians. Like I could see that being kind of rubbing them the wrong way. Like it's like we just have appropriated their entire Hebrew Bible with this person of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's what we believe, but at the same time, it's you can relate. Like you said, with human nature.
Yeah. Again, Jesus predicts his death and resurrection right in the middle of all this.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of sandwiched in there. Just
pretty
like a reminder.
Specific. Again, everybody still seems pretty shocked.
Yeah, and they don't get it.
Yeah,
you'll see later they still don't get it.
Very direct, what he says there. I don't have the passage, but I just remember being like, that seems pretty clear.
Yeah. He
Like,
says,
I'm
"Behold, we are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered, and they will condemn him to death.
yeah, that's pretty specific.
And they will hand him over to the Gentiles to mock and scourge and crucify him. And on the third day, he will be raised
Yeah,
up."
it's like the whole thing, very
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, that is very specific.
then-
Which is what makes the next part even more amazing. Immediately.
Yeah, are we talking about the mother's request?
Yes.
Yeah, the best ever. Sons of Zebedee. She asks if they can be his right and left hand in his kingdom.
He just finished telling of his death and resurrection
Mm-hmm.
and what he's going to have to experience. And it's like, without missing a beat, hey, I wasn't listening
Yeah.
at all just
and
now.
he says that. He says, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're asking for.
And this is a total mom kind of moment, you know?
But it's interesting. He does say they will eventually drink the cup.
Yeah.
It is going to happen, but you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I love this too. He says, "My cup you shall drink, but to sit on my right and my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those to whom it has been prepared by my Father." And there are a lot of much smarter folks than me, biblical scholars and theologians, that believe that he's referring to the two thieves that will be on his right and his left
Fascinating.
on Golgotha, which is really fascinating to ponder.
And I heard another minister talking about this, and I had always just thought this was a hilarious passage. But he was saying how he was actually kind of commending the mother and these kids because they actually believed it enough to ask that his kingdom was real and it was coming. So much so that they were trying to get a place in it already. It was that real to them.
And which follows, he uses it as a teaching moment. And where he says, "No, my kingdom's not that way.
Yeah.
The Gentiles, they lord it over you. Their great men exercise authority, but not this way with you guys."
Yep. He says the masters or rulers will be servants.
Yeah.
You know.
"Whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave."
Yeah. At the end there's a passage where a blind man is healed.
Yeah.
I love that one just for the way Jesus responds.
Yes,
He says,
me too.
"What do you want?" Like, what are you asking for? Like, they're blind and yelling at him. Like, it seems pretty obvious what they're wanting him to do. I don't know what the,
I think a little bit of that is, let me see a little bit of your faith.
Yeah.
That's your end of it is responding what you need from me.
Yeah.
And of course he grants it. I love that it says moved with compassion. You see that over and over and over again in the gospel narratives, that Jesus was constantly moved with compassion.
Because I kind of read it like almost annoyed. Like you can read into this stuff so much.
Oh my gosh.
But like that could be like, what do you want? You know what I mean? But then it says he's moved with compassion. That wasn't what was happening. It was a compassionate exchange there. Something was happening, He wasn't like
Absolutely.
mad at him.
And there's so much context that's lost to us over time. Like, even body language.
Yeah,
and
there's no... It's unless we get a specific, revelation to know exactly what was happening. There's a lot of... You would have had to been there.
Yes, I love what Pastor Jeff says a lot, that that people think of Jesus as this kind of just wandering, aimless hippie dude with a blank gaze, spaced out. He was probably so charming and funny, and
you mean he wasn't like William Dafoe?
No, not at all. I think I read a commentary too. There is a really tough passage about a Syrophoenician woman where he says that they can't give the bread to the dogs.
Yep.
But that commentator said he literally could be like tongue in cheek, wink, wink. Like you don't know
how you're reading it.
How you're reading that.
Because you could read that in a total super intense.
Yeah.
Is he being racist?
Like how many job circumstances or relationships have been affected by that? You can't read inflection on a text message.
Yep.
It's like, what did that mean?
Totally.
So I think there's a little bit of that there as well, because he was like always moved with compassion, and I love that this is just sandwiched in there like a reminder. This is part of the kingdom, gospel, healing.
Healing, yeah.
It is continuous and available.
Awesome. 21, we get into Jesus riding in Jerusalem on a donkey as a king.
So good.
I love it too. I don't know why this stuck out. We were so big on the palm branches, for this thing, but it actually first says they spread their coats on the ground. To me, that's even bigger. Like it's not just some branch. Like their clothing,
Yeah.
they're taking it
And
off
that's
and
like
laying it
their
down.
only coat, probably.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah. Like this is like the highest honor you could give, and they're all cheering, Hosanna, son of David. Um, and this is crazy too. Jesus goes straight into the temple and drives out the people buying and selling. Um, uh, so this amazing moment, it immediately, it doesn't go where you think it's going to go. It shifts into him, cleaning house.
Well, and he's acting as a king. So he rides in as a king, but not the king they're expecting.
Yeah.
He's humble on a donkey. It's from Zechariah, that prophecy, and it talks about a king who's going to come in peace.
Yeah.
But then he instantly goes into the temple and judges it. And this is really bizarre too. It says, they say to him, "Do you hear what these children are saying?" Well, it's concerning Hosanna, the son of Hosanna to the Son of David. And he says, "Yes, have you never read, out of the mouth of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise for yourself." That's from Psalm 8. And that's one of the most key royal psalms in all of Psalms.
Wow.
That's the Psalm of the King. And so that's what this king looks like.
Yeah.
Not what they were expecting in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Again, I love that children are there and they're attracted to him. Like we're talking about.
Yeah.
He's not,
It's not this weirdo.
he must have been attractive, and charismatic in a way that, kids are not attracted to grumpy, crazy, mean people
No, not
in
at all.
general. So the chief priests don't like that. They're all giving him praise. It highlights another crazy cool passage where Jesus goes to eat a fig, and there's no figs, so he gets mad and curses the tree, and it dies,
Yeah.
and the tree withers. This one says its tree withers immediately. I think there might be a different version of that in another gospel.
Yeah, there is, I think, in Luke, where they come back.
It's like the next day or something.
Yeah, they come back the next day.
Yeah.
And it's happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think this is just this ongoing theme of, hey, you've had all this time to bear fruit for me. And if you can't bear fruit, then there's going to be another people that's going to raise up and
Yeah.
be my people, and they will bear fruit.
Yeah. And he tells them, because they're amazed by it, that if you believe, you can throw a mountain into the sea, and if you believe whatever you ask in prayer, you'll have. Beautiful poetic imagery there. I love, picking up a mountain and throwing it in the ocean.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Jesus, again, the Gospels are just full of these back and forth with the chief priests. They're trying to trap him.
Yeah, they're scrambling.
Yeah. And then he traps them. He turns it around. He asks them about John the Baptist, and
Yeah.
he sets a trap for them. They can't answer, so they have to leave him alone. Then we get into the parable of two sons. One son says he will do the work, but never does it. The other says he will not, but later does.
Yeah.
Um,
I've always liked this too because it's just so simple. It's short and sweet, and it's coming right on the heels of John the Baptist. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because he's talking about the tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before you, because they're the ones that initially were like, their lifestyle, their way of
Right.
doing things are like, no,
yeah.
I'm not going to be a part of this. But they change their mind. They repent.
Yep.
And that's what happened with people that were coming to John the Baptist, and the leaders, the elders, the chief priests.
Yeah.
They were having none of that.
Right.
And so he's calling them out.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Next parable is the parable parable of the tenants.
Yeah, this is a great one.
I'll just give an overview here, and then you can add. He has a vineyard. He hires others to run it. He sends his servants to check on it, and they kill him. I think there's a couple servants maybe, and then eventually he sends his own son, and they kill him.
Yeah.
And then he ends it with like a question, what should happen to these people who keep killing the servants?
Yeah, he forced them to bring judgment on themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of a lot of parables are really tough to kind of get through and figure out. This one is really crystal clear. All throughout the Old Testament, the vineyard almost always represents Israel. And so these servants, these slaves that he's sending to them over and over again are the prophets, the prophets of old. And one by one, they reject these prophets. They don't listen to them. They don't heed their warnings. They, hurt some of them. And eventually, God says, all right, I'm going to send my son, which is Jesus himself. And the response is, well, they're going to crucify him.
Yeah.
So once again, he's predicting his death.
Yeah, and they it says they know he's talking about them, and plan to arrest him. But the people like him. The people are for him, so they stay off. And there's an amazing passage in there where he 21:42, where he says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." That's like a bedrock scripture there, the cornerstone.
Yep.
And therefore I tell you that the kingdom of God, again the kingdom, will be taken away from you and given to people who will produce its fruit. Anyone who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, and anyone on whom it falls will be crushed. Again, when there's stuff like that, it's very specific for me to the importance of Jesus, the person of Jesus as the cornerstone. Like literally, like, no, this is it. This is the guy. You're gonna have to deal with this guy one way or another.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it says that I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing the fruit of it. And this whole stone with the builders rejected passage Peter uses explicitly to talk about how we are now a chosen people,
right?
A royal priesthood, a holy nation.
Yeah. As we get into 22, more parables here. This one's the parable of the wedding banquet. Again, he starts off, the kingdom of heaven is like king who prepares a wedding banquet for his son and invites people to come. The people invited don't come. I think they kill his servants.
Well, it's amazing too. It's like they're literally saying we don't have time for God. We don't have time for the king. Life's too important. We can't make it to this wonderful, lavish, amazing feast you prepared.
Yeah.
It's like his grace is shining through, but you know what? We don't have time for that. We're not even going to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it says too, there's like military. Yeah, the king was enraged and he sent his armies.
And destroys them.
Yeah. And destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire.
So intense.
Yeah.
Then he invites others from the streets. And then, curious part here, one of the men comes without wedding clothes, and they throw him out.
Yeah.
And the famous into darkness, weeping, gnashing of teeth.
Right. I think the gravity there, continuing from the parable of the landowner, is where he says that it will be taken away from you and given to a new people producing the fruit. Well, there's still with these new people, there's going to be that requirement of producing fruit.
Yeah.
And so that one person that shows up and they're not really all in. It's like they're...
Yeah, when I was reading, I felt like there was still a honor requirement.
Yeah.
Even for these other, it wasn't just
it's
a free
like
for all.
They're somehow behaving like the original people were behaving with their lack of honor.
He wasn't respecting like you were talking, they didn't have time for it. This guy's not giving it weight. He's not making it important.
Yeah. And it seems obvious that everybody else that showed up seems to have gotten it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even with this new kingdom promise and this new people, there's still, that responsibility of how we respond to God's grace
Right. Right.
in the appropriate way, devotion and awe.
Yeah. He says, many invited, few chosen. Then we get into, they try to trap him with the tax question. The famous pay Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's.
Yes.
Just super clever response there.
It is. And I was reading a commentary of a guy named R.T. France, and this really jumped out. He said, Jesus perceived their malice and said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites?" So he calls them hypocrites. And it says, "Show me the coin used for the poll tax." And so this was a coin that was abhorrent to them. It had the image of Caesar on it, likening him to a god.
Yeah.
Like something that they couldn't tolerate in their very strict Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, so they brought him one. So that means they had it on them.
Yeah, they were already doing
like
it.
they had it
Yeah.
on their body, and apparently he didn't,
Mm-hmm.
because he asked them to bring it to him.
Yeah.
And that's where he says, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." Yeah, just once again, just masterful.
Yeah.
Takes the whole thing and turns it on its head.
Yeah. Later on in the chapter, highlight I gotta get in here, the greatest commandment. One of my favorite verses: "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." That's the first one. The second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that's the new covenant, like we were talking about the old
That's
one.
Yep.
All those laws and everything really boil down to these two things.
Mm-hmm. He even says that on these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like that's what, like we were talking about, how some of those were really wild, just intense, specific laws and things, but it was leading to this, was building toward this other way of seeing things. And we get to 23. Again, the greatest among us is a servant. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble will be exalted. Another theme that just sort of continually happening with Jesus, where he's turning things on their head.
And he explicitly uses himself as an example here in verse 10. He
Yeah.
says, for one is your leader, that is Christ the Messiah.
Yeah, yeah,
Which makes me think of Philippians 2, that beautiful Christ hymn where he talks about how he was, though in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited,
Right.
emptied himself.
yeah,
He's the prime example, what that looks like.
yeah.
It's amazing.
He gets into it with the Pharisees again. He says, "Don't be hypocritical and just give tithes while you neglect justice, mercy, and faithfulness." Amazing.
Yeah.
He's not getting down on tithe. He's saying give tithe, but don't neglect these other things. Justice. It's crazy. Justice and then mercy right after it. Kind of like these two things balance each other out somehow. And then with faithfulness.
And they were the calling card of the prophets and the
Yeah.
people. Like that's what they were constantly imploring their people to do justice and mercy
Yeah.
in the midst of whatever might have been going on at that time.
Yeah, and we were talking like with Moses, that time where God is going to wipe them all out, and he convinces them not to. Like that's mercy.
Yeah.
Then he comes down, and there's a level of
There's still
justice that
justice.
happens as well, where a bunch of them don't make
One
it.
where God reveals who he really is in Exodus 34, where he says he's compassionate and full of truth, loving kindness, and forgiving the sin and iniquity for thousands of generations, but by no means letting the guilty go unpunished.
Yeah.
That's part of that same character.
Right. Right.
You can't have the one without the other. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Then we get into the woes. I'm not going to read through them all. There's a bunch of woes. They're directed at the Pharisees. And it's interesting, he says, you would kill the prophets like your ancestors. And he finishes by saying, go ahead and finish what you started. Or what they started. It's intense. I mean, it sounds intense, but they're also the whole time over and over planning to arrest and kill him. You know what I mean? Like, he's just seeing what they're doing, you know what I mean, and responding to it. And calling them out, basically. But I love how it ends, though, and we'll end here. It ends by saying he wants to gather them like a mother gathers her children. First of all, he's using the mother there as an example. That's a different thing. There's a caring, nurturing side there. Right after all this intensity, he's saying, this is actually what I want.
Yeah, well, he's almost bookending it. Like, look, I want justice and mercy. I want these good things, but this is what you're
you are pushing into this other
is what
thing.
You've twisted it into. Yeah. No, I want this.
Yeah. And it says, but they are unwilling and God has abandoned them without protection. They won't see him again until they say, which is, I don't know, hopeful maybe. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Accept him and acknowledge who he is. There had to be some that did eventually.
Yeah.
Come to that realization and change their mind. I mean, so much richness in these 3 chapters. It's amazing. So we'll end there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Any last comments there, Pastor Tyler?
No, this has been awesome. The Bible's amazing.
So cool.
The Word. I love it. Love it. Love it.
So keep tuning in with us, guys. Life Point Table Talk Podcast.
Yeah, and keep reading with us. And if you can't catch up, don't worry about it. Just start wherever we're at and just go from there.
Yeah. Jump in there.
Jump in.
Have a great day, everybody. Peace.